Today's episode is presented by Lodestar, the fee experts.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Lodestar's Lending Leaders. We have a special guest, good friend Matt Einheber, founder of TitleBox, a company that automates title clearing for title agents. Longtime friend, longtime industry person, and notably, Matt was our very first Lodestar Lending Leaders guest almost 2 years ago now. So I don't know if I thought we would still be doing this at this point. So, he was nice enough to come back. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Hopefully that's why I'm a special guest, and I'd like to believe that everyone else is just a guest, but I'm a special guest.
No, I usually say friend, but not good friend. So you got that qualifier too. So yeah, we're going to take a little different take today. Get Matt and I thinking a little bit more than normal. In terms of, we've done market update sessions. I think one thing that Matt and I had been communicating about, which was interesting to us just being business owners and probably like data nerds, is we're seeing a lot of changes in the industry right now, especially, we sit on different sides. Lodestar gets to see mortgage applications, gets to see mortgage activity, in the thousands and hundreds of thousands of transactions throughout the country. So that gives us the ability to make some assumptions and draw some info out of it. And then Matt, on the working with title agent side, is you kind of see the other side of it, right? Whenever, folks finally apply for their mortgage, get approved, find a house, order a title, that's kind of when you're, finding out. So we always kind of find this gap, right? And I think we're, seeing now in the data that we're in kind of this weird point in the industry, and we're recording this in early February. So who knows what has changed from the time that we record this to now. So we will not make any Super Bowl predictions either, because it hasn't happened yet. And we're here in Philadelphia.
I could make a few Super Bowl predictions, but I wouldn't want to upset anyone who might be from the Midwest.
No, someone a few weeks ago actually bragged about the Eagles being either 9-1 or 10-1 on this podcast, and they lost the next 2 weeks.
So, all right, no,
yeah, you can't do anything. You can't do anything. So, yeah. So, let's see. Let me just, I guess, how do you want to start? Do you want to kind of summarize what we've been looking at?
Yeah, the way this started, I think the interesting point, as you said, obviously we're in a volatile time, right? Over the last 6 months. Were up and then they went down, and there's just movement. And when movement happens, inefficiencies get created, and there's gaps in, and there's opportunity, and everyone loves a good hack, right? I like to find a hack of information so we can read and know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think the whole world is looking for that in lots of different ways. And so you and I were talking, and I was kind of thinking, right? We were texting, and I was like, it's interesting. I never really thought of it this way exactly, but you're early, right? You're a canary in the coal mine. You're like a leading indicator, because when people, to explain it, what may be obvious to some people listening, but when somebody's thinking about buying a house, many of those people, at least enough of a percentage of those people that's going to guide what's happening are going to go get a pre-qual, right? They're going to get a pre-qualification for mortgage. And when that happens, that triggers a need for the lender to quote, right? And that's you guys. And so even if only 10, 20, 30% of people get a pre-qual, that's enough of a sampling to indicate activity, just broader market activity. And we're down this road, right? We're after they're under contract. That's when we get triggered. So we're not necessarily a leading indicator. So, but folks like title, and mortgage and real estate sales for that matter, everybody's down the road from you. So at different phases. We looked at some of that data, and so you've got trend stuff in terms of what's been happening, and then geography too, which is also kind of interesting where it's been happening. And my first question for you, we can talk about the answer to that question, was let's look backwards, right? So we dug up some data. Let's look backwards for the last 2 years or so and see what to confirm, first of all, that you are in fact a canary in the coal mine. What happened, and then what did you see data wise, and then what do we know happened 1, 2, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was after that, to see if that really did mirror what happened in life. I think it did. You agree?
Well, I'm glad I have my data up now, because I'm getting asked a lot more questions than I do normally too. And I know this started, we were talking, our volume has been up pretty significantly from mid-January on, and keeps on going up. So we were texting about that. You hadn't quite seen that affect your business, although I think you're starting to now. And you asked me the question that got me down this rabbit hole of, hey, is that purchase or refinance driving it? I didn't know off the top of my head, but we have the data. We have the ability to run it pretty easily. And I'm the type of person is when I know I need to go find a number, it's very motivating. I'm like, hey, I want to see what's actually happening here. So what we have right now is we're looking at kind of total searches that we have throughout the country and how many of those are purchases. So I only went back as far as January 2001, which was towards the, still in kind of the meat of the refi boom, I guess. And at that point we had, our volume really peaked in that first quarter of 2021. I think getting to its highest point in May of 2021. And we stayed probably about, it seems anywhere between 40 to 50% purchases. So refis were making up the majority of the business, right? Which kind of tracks, right? Things were really busy. A lot of people cared about refis. You could also juxtapose interest rates on this, right? And I know at that time they were still really low.
And I look at these peaks, I look at the peak stuff, like I'm looking at a graph, so I'm trying to match it up. Is that March of 2021 and maybe May, June of 2021, right? And then I remember looking at this when we looked at it, when I was looking just the data, not the graph. And then what happened 3 months later? And I actually went back and 3 months later, this showed up in the marketplace. This showed up in common speak and in actual sales. And it seemed to track over and over again that you were about 90 days ahead of, oh, it's getting busy again in the real estate sales world. You know what I mean? And
it would be interesting to see 2020. Obviously, like the data is a little bit over the place because we pretty much shut down. The industry shut down for a few weeks in March and then kind of jumped after that. And then kind of the next blip too, which I think confirms it, is I think right after March of last year of 2022 was our peak in terms of highest volume. And then we were still, at that point, we were about only 1/3 refis. But after that volume started going down, and I think that's when, the proverbial crap hit the fan.
It is, but we saw the volume continue through July. Like we saw, and we have a similar, maybe not as much number, but we have, spread out title companies throughout about a dozen states and, and thousands in transactions. So it's enough of a statistical sampling to probably get a line on that side of things as well. We saw that volume stay high until July, right? Into July.
And I think the thing that gets us the most excited now too is mid-January it bumped up again, right? We're up 20 to 30% of volume since December. Even now, February is about 7% trending ahead of January. So we're seeing
I'm sorry, you had a big gully in October of like from the late summer, right, into like the fall. It went down a bunch, and the same thing. I think everybody for the fourth quarter was like, for the real estate transaction,
which is usually the case anyway, but it definitely died down. And I think the data's fun to look at, but I think the other question on top of this is what behavior is driving that, what things are driving that out there. And to the extent that we could predict things going forward, that's the fun thing. If we knew what was going to happen, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing anyway. We'd be on a boat somewhere. What?
Yeah. Maybe we do know what's going to happen.
There you go. I like the optimism, but and I think the thing I found the most interesting is, you look at what's happening now and you see, okay, January's up, right? Interest rates are down, so I would think, okay, maybe some folks who haven't been able to refi in the last year or two are refining, right? That seems to be the thing that makes sense to me. And the data does not support that, right? It seems that now we're up to about 67 or 76%, so over 3/4 of our volume is purchase related, which is pretty much an all-time high. That's almost twice what it was during the refi boom. And that's still up from low 70s in December. So it means that the volume went up dramatically, but it also means that new volume was probably like 80% or more purchase interest.
Yeah, which logically actually does make sense to me because again, rates went up so much in 2022 that it's, if anybody's waiting to refi, that opportunity is maybe just simply gone for so many of them, at least for now, whatever for the foreseeable future. yeah, I mean that restock hasn't happened yet, and we can prognosticate over why and what's going to happen, and so all the this is what we're feeling and hearing from
Yeah.
clients there. But this is sort
Right.
of so interesting, and I think kind of, I shouldn't say exciting because but it is kind of exciting.
I find it exciting because it's our core business, right? Anytime volume goes up, it means you have pretty direct money in the pocket. So that's definitely numbers. I check these types of numbers daily, so it's definitely.
I don't see how it's possible that there's not, like, I've been saying spring bump, and I've been feeling that from just anecdotally, like from clients and hearing from people and what's going on in the world and what's going on with some lenders and what's going on with title companies, and the ground's kind of moving a lot with that. So a lot of folks that are in real estate sales, especially, and maybe lenders too, that are still at a place where they're like, I don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? So we probably have a little bit more of an interesting, like, early and later bird's eye view of things. And I think that this, based on this and then all those other things, but this too, I would say with this data, it's impossible for there not to be I said that word, for there not to be like I say a spring bump, but like come March, right? And this has been consistent over the last year and a half, 2 years that we've looked at this, 2 years, about a 3-month lag, right? From you're 3 months ahead of the rest of the world. So that's around March, March, April, whatever. How is there not going to be?
And I mean, it makes sense, right? What's it? Pre-qual is good for about 90 days. So if you want to go in, start applying for a mortgage, be ready to look at stuff in March, late March, April, May. It makes sense to go in and do that now. But one thing, you talked about real estate professionals, and we've both been around this industry a while. I grew up around this industry. When is the spring purchase market not a hope? Right. So how do you separate the hope of a spring? Like I hear it every damn year, right? Like how do you separate that from, what we're actually could be seeing?
Yeah, I agree. But I think, I mean, for me, the last 2 years have been so abnormal. Obviously, like January, especially in like normal climates, maybe in pockets of Florida where there's, snowbirds and tourist stuff, has a little bit of a different cycle sometimes. But in most places, January and June, January is all going to be slower than June, no matter the year. I don't care how busy January is. June's going to be busier, or vice versa. But I think that's the last 2 years have been so abnormal. Like January wasn't a valley in 2021. It was maybe it was a plateau. Maybe it stopped growing at such a rapid pace, but it didn't. It wasn't. It was, everything was upside down, man. It was really weird. So we're kind of like normalizing to a regular season again and whatever. But I think that if we're like, for me, there's so much unknown and there's so much scary stuff out there that people are, so if there is a spring bump, it confirms to me that whatever this is, whether it's seasonal, there's still demand there, right? Seasonal or not, there's still demand, right? And people have, it's January, so that's your low season anyway, and people are hibernating the holidays and all those things. And B, listen, the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months have been a lot of bad news and a lot of unknown things. Your layoff here and stock market going down there and interest rates going up there. And so if you were like, I'd like to buy a house, but let's just kind of wait and see what happens. Prices going up. And so, so now 6 months have passed by, we're through the winter, and now maybe we're whiffing that real demand that never really went away. People just sort of, chilled for a minute.
I mean, hopefully, right? And I think there's, obviously our data isn't perfect. It's just a subset of what's going on in the market. It's what we see. There's noise in the data. We do better in the months with more business days. So February is usually an awful month. So the fact that we're up on January is actually significant. March is a long month, 31 days. So like that's going to be a really good month, right? So there's that aspect of it. But then you also, you look in what you're seeing, right? Because I think one of the things we both love about this industry is there's so many pieces to it. So you have interest rates as one, but then there's inventory, sales price, right? Like, yes, it probably, holding a mortgage costs 50 to 80% more than it did a couple years ago on literally the exact same house. So are there prices going down to the point where that's starting to make sense?
Yeah, that I don't know. Obviously, this is telling us that, and And I don't, again, just anecdotally, what I see out there, I don't necessarily see that, right?
Right. I mean, anecdotally, you hearing that there's more and more offers getting, like, there's more competition for homes, right? In a way that they're.
But the
The ones that
pockets,
you're.
yeah, if you talk about anecdotes, like,
Yeah.
was it you? We were having a conversation. No, it was someone else. I know who it was. And we were talking about a particular neighborhood that's a pocket in the suburbs
Yeah.
of Philadelphia. That is a very stable market, right? It's not a migration market.
Yeah.
It doesn't get too high and it doesn't get too low. There's a pocket that this person was telling me about. It's a very desirable place where, there's still low inventory. Not a lot of people are moving homes.
Right.
And, this was like 2 weeks ago, desirable house went up, price that was way more than it was 2 years ago, but, market rate price, and 16 offers and it was gone in 24 hours. I mean, the same thing still today in a stabilized market, not a market where there's a lot of people coming into it. So that, I mean, again, that tells me that, like, that may not be the case everywhere. And that's a particularly like desirable pocket, but I'm hearing those stories still about the right product in the right places and the right things everywhere. So demand is there. It never, what you're afraid of is that demand goes away. People don't want it anymore. Not that it's there and they're just waiting because,
well, and purchase volume and interest rates aren't directly correlated. Refi volume certainly is. With interest rates, but purchase is a little bit different because of all the factors. And that was also one of the things that we noticed. You talked about cities and suburbs specifically, looking at where that extra 25 to 30% of the volume has come from. Our biggest increases are really those suburban areas: Fairfax County, Virginia; Maricopa County, Arizona; Cook County, the Chicago area; Virginia Beach, Virginia; Hillsborough, which I think is Tampa area in Florida; Wake County, North Carolina; Mecklenburg County, North Carolina; Loudoun County, outside D.C., where my in-laws live. So shout out to Brad and Betsy. But so there's these like right outside city areas, which also makes sense, right? You kind of get the data you have and then try to make some decisions with it, or try to see what things make sense. So it seems like more people want to live in suburbs, sure, right? So that's trending, and I think. There's two questions to kind of end on and talk about here. One is this a blip or a trend? Right? That's the thing on top of my head. Is this a couple months and then it's going to go away?
That's hard, right? Because we don't have, we've got this and we don't have beyond that. So I think that part is a little bit more we're guessing at that part, right? And so I don't know, but what my instinct and all the pieces that we're gathering here, that we gather as being the business that we're in, I think that the bottom line is what I said a moment ago: the underlying demand and desire for people to buy homes has not gone away. There's been times in our history, 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, when we went through a really, really tough time from 08, 9, 10, 11. The desire to buy homes was gone for a minute there. I don't think that's the case now. I think desire to buy homes and people trying to figure out how to get into the market and how to buy homes is there. They want to do it. They're figuring it out. Many of them have been, at least temporarily priced out. Interest rates hurt that. Prices going up hurt that. Lots of things affect that. But they still want to buy a house and they're still trying to figure out how to buy one. And so that's a very, very, very good thing. And that tells me that, like, we'll go through this, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, as things adjust, the people will be there to buy a home.
And in the same ways, if we're headed towards a soft landing economically, right, we kind of will see more of a soft increase really than anything else. So you talked about 2008, 2009. There was a surge in inventory after that because there were foreclosures. People were defaulting on their mortgages. So that sent prices dirt cheap, right? And I just don't see that happening here. I don't see that surge of inventory. Prices have appreciated a lot in the last 2 years. 50% in some of these suburban areas. They ain't going down 50%, right? They're not going back down to those levels. So, it's about finding the right product and kind of the right fits for those types of things.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry. Foreclosures are up, but not not at abnormal level. They're just up because they were down for a while. It's kind of normal.
Well, there's a moratorium, right? They weren't kicking people out of homes during a pandemic.
So. No, and there's so much equity now in the marketplace that didn't exist then. That's a huge difference. That people who might be in a position where they might otherwise have needed to foreclose now have another option. They can maybe sell it. They have equity. Right. They don't have to foreclose anymore. I mean, in many cases. So
or things like assumptions now. You see more and more about too, or reverse mortgages. People are staying in their homes, right, and utilizing that equity that they've built up over years. So these are all little things that affect that supply, that affects volume, that affects prices. So, but the last question is, as someone in the industry, as a business owner, if you're a title agent, if you're a mortgage lender looking at this, what do you do with this information? Because and what are we seeing people do? I guess is
why. No, I think I think it's good to. First of all, I think it helps you sleep at night a little bit, right? If I'm a title company, if I'm in real estate sales, for that matter, how do you spend money on marketing? How do you prepare for 3 months ahead of yourself to say, all right, what's my business going to be like? I think people right, you prepare and you do things, whether it's marketing, whether it's just psychology of go out and get new clients. I don't think that they're out there. I do think that they're out there. What are my plans going to be? I think that it doesn't mean I think there's going to be a wave of business like there was in 2020. Like that was abnormal and kind of silly almost. But I think that people are really afraid of the future right now. And I think, and that's been the sort of story for the last 6 months. And I have been too, right? In October and November and December, I was like, I don't know.
There's definitely a batten down the hatches period, coming out of, like you said, the end of the third quarter into the end of the year. It's like, let's just survive.
And I expected that batten that you and I met and talked about, that batten that we were both in the batten the hatches mode. And I expected that to feel that for I dare I say like longer. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
I mean, usually the first quarter is that in the industry, right? It's not
much. It's not feeling like that. And I don't feel that way right now. I feel like, okay, I see something coming and I feel it coming. I see these pieces.
Right.
I don't think we're headed in 2023 is not starting off in the negative way that I thought that it would.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, this volume is still 16% lower than it was last January, right? So, like, we're still like, it's the fact that maybe we hit the bottom and now we're coming back up, I think, gets us more excited. So, also means there's still a ways to go.
There's a ways to go, but I really don't do discount. I don't know how much or how we can discount, May of 15 months, right? Or maybe it's a little longer, but I'm going to call it 15 months from June rather of 2020. 15 months after that to late 2021, and there was some trailing into early 2022. But so everything's down, but of course it's down. I mean,
you're going from a 25-year high to a 25-year low, right? So let's just wind up in the middle.
Right. It's sort of preposterous. Like I look at companies and I look at I kind of try to discount 2021 and 2020. I look at it, it's a piece of information, but it's not. That's not normal.
I think it's a really confusing time too for business owners in figuring this out. Because of that, like a few months ago, everyone was batting down the hatches. There were layoffs, there was consolidations. We had clients who were going out of business or just closing up shop. But now it's like very much you have buyers and you have sellers. You have people who are still in that mode, but you have people who are now making bets, getting more aggressive, acquiring businesses. So it's a lot more dynamic in that way, which makes things really interesting at the moment, because you have more of a decision. How do you feel? Are things going to keep on going up? Can we get more aggressive? What does that look like? We were talking about this offline right before of like, how are you, going to feel that way business-wise?
I actually see that in the title space, right? So I can't fully speak for the lender space. I don't know but I have my hands dirty in the title space, and what I see and feel there is a dichotomy spreading farther and farther apart, meaning like the smaller, more localized title agencies are like not necessarily going to feel the market, but depending on where they are in the pocket that they're in. I think bigger companies are getting bigger, people are more aggressive at eating things up. And the smaller companies are just kind of they're stabilizing what they're doing, and they're peeling away from.
Well, then the ones in the middle, do you wind up on one side or the other, right? Like, and I think the mortgage space is the exact same thing. There's kind of a hollowing out of the industry, where you're either going to have really big companies or really small localized companies, and like the in-between companies are in some ways the most vulnerable ones. So that's a lot of our clients. I hope that isn't the case, but I think you're seeing it in title, you're seeing it in mortgage too. So there's just all of these factors, right? Especially as you get the average owner who's retirement age now too.
There's so many factors. I mean, in title, I can tell you there's so many factors, and I wonder what the parallels are or how similar it is in the mortgage space. I don't know that as well. You know, it's so much better than I do. But there's a lot of factors going on, it's the average age. I can tell you the story about the timeline of that, and even in certain places like the state of Florida, I think that when 2008, 9, 10 happened, there was a surge of new title companies in the early 2000s from that wave. And those companies, I think a lot of people I know a lot of people predicted that companies would kind of die and go out of business. And of course, some did, but a lot more survived than people thought, because I mean,
same in the mortgage space. You have the number of people I was like, hey, I was tending bar in 2003. My buddy's like, do this mortgage thing. It's easy money. And now they're, running a mortgage shop for the last 20 years.
And then I think what happened to those folks, same thing, title and mortgage. In 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, people were like, oh, these people are going to go out of business. And some people did. But more people survived because those people were in business for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. They weren't in business that long, and they were still energetic about it. And they were still hungry, and they still wanted to figure out how to make their business survive. And now it's 15 years in, and they've gone through 2 cycles, and they just went 2 years where they couldn't hire anybody. Their hair was caught on fire. They're and they're in a different place in life.
Yeah. Eyeing college payments, eyeing all the, real responsibilities.
And I think on top of that, now you've got, a difference in technology, right? And the tools, the things that technology brings and does for your business, certainly in title, that I think the smaller companies are struggling to either figure out how to bring it on, pay for some of those things to compete, and sort of collect them and deliver them in a fluid experience. And now, like, the experience for customers is going to feel very, very different. And so do I want to get into that game, or now I'm 15 years into this business, I'm in a place in life. So I think there's that and a few other things going on at once that make
plenty of things for us to talk about. We're already over on time, so I don't want to go down too far down the rabbit hole on this. But no, we got to come back. We got to update some more monthly data and see. Now I'm just nervous when our data drops. I have to be like the bearer of bad news of like, hey.
But you'll know it. Yeah, you'll know it. I think this really is a canary in the coal mine. I think we've discovered, we had the aha moment that, like,
we will see. Well, between this and the Super Bowl, I really hope this podcast ages well, and if so, we can do a little bit more.
Have that data here, please. I want to see it.
Yeah. But we will see. So, Matt, I appreciate your time. I know you speak a lot about this on your end. So, if anyone wants to find you, where can they go?
Yeah, they can find us. Please find our company at TitleBox.com.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. Thank you for listening to Lodestar's Lending Leaders. Please like, subscribe, and rate us 5 stars anywhere you get your podcast. I'd like to give a special thank you to the Lodestar team involved with the production of this podcast, including Elena Gardner, Tim Austin, and John Gardner.